Hi, I'm Danny,
I'm Sam.
and this is Business in a Brew.
We'll be poring over business stories,
and talking about things that interest us in the world of business.
so we'd like you to just take a few minutes out, listen.
Yeah, we'd love it if you join our conversation with us. Hello. You all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Frog.
Fine. So today I'm going to talk about Airbnb and like the dark side of Airbnb.
Really?
Yes, like the Darth Vader side
Oh,
of
I've
Airbnb.
heard a few rumours
Were they from me?
about stuff. And other people.
And other people, fair enough. Yeah, right. So I'll go back a bit to the start of Airbnb. So it started in 2007, and it was a couple of friends who there was a design show on in San Francisco where they lived, and they basically rented out airbeds, literal airbeds, in their apartment to people who were going to this design show. So they found it worked really, really well, and they made money off of it, and essentially expanded. From there, it's not a difficult concept, but I mean, I wouldn't want someone sleeping in my lounge, but that's a different matter.
Mm-hmm.
But it started as co-occupying a space rather than at the moment where it's grown to be you can have the private use of it and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got 3 million lodgings registered in 200 countries.
Mm.
They turn over 31 billion, which is more than the Hilton and the Wyndham Group combined. It is a lot.
That's staggering.
A lot of money, yeah.
Yeah. And when was it started?
2007. So not that long ago, no.
I think it came on my radar probably 10 years ago.
That would be... Oh, yeah. No, I can't do maths. That would be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously it started in America.
Yeah.
It always takes a while to get over here. We're behind everything. So everyone thought it was crazy. It almost kind of didn't get off the ground, but it did. And one of the things that was unique about it, it wasn't just welcoming any old stranger who paid for a bed into your room. They asked for resumes. So people almost had to identify themselves and prove that they weren't a lunatic.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, people fake CVs all the time. But the theory was that there was some kind of check and balance system to make sure you were bringing someone into your home that was...
So this is before the
safe.
peer review thing came in?
Yeah, so that was the was the scalable version of the original... have my airbed, but can I see your resume first to make sure you're not a lunatic? So its original intent was urban rental, so it was supposed to relieve pressure on hotels and give people a more local experience, which it still does.
Definitely.
Which it still does now. So there was some added bits of personality and stuff, and it was the right time with the recession, and it was all about being a local tourist rather than being a complete stranger to a city, and you could find out more, especially if you're sharing a space with the owner. You know, it's supposed to be authentic, artisanal.
Yeah,
that one.
Do.
Yeah.
But I like these things. We've talked previously about Ben and Jerry's. These things start out with this lovely,
really good intention.
Local,
100%. I think Airbnb has grown, obviously, massively beyond someone's airbed in their apartment in San Francisco. But one of the biggest things I found when I was looking into it, it's illegal in most of the countries it operates in.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Illegal?
But it is almost impossible to stop. So New York, for example, have a bunch of local laws in place that are essentially protecting living space for residents, for long-term residents of New York. It is therefore illegal to rent an entire apartment on Airbnb for less than 30 days. So it's preserving the long-term availability of accommodation. But obviously, there are thousands on there, and they just cannot stop it. They can't preserve affordable housing because if there is a lack of housing, and the only option is this Airbnb at whatever it is a night, which is an inflated cost, it pushes the cost of accommodation up. And the accommodation that's left that is affordable goes, well, we can make X amount more because they're already charging that. So that artificially inflates the existing long-term accommodation. And the same is true in a lot of European cities. So Barcelona is another great example. About 50% of the Airbnb rentals in Barcelona are unlicensed. And Barcelona, as an entity itself, has sued or fined, if you like, Airbnb €600,000 for not adhering to those laws. And it's exactly the same reason, preserving affordable accommodation for the locals.
But it makes you wonder, though, it's not necessarily Airbnb that you would think would be the target of that. They're facilitating it. But what about the individuals who own the properties?
Well, yeah, because if you didn't have Airbnb, you could put it on cottages.com or booking.com.
Things did exist before that.
They did.
I've rented an apartment in New York before, way before Airbnb appeared.
Yeah, and there are licensing laws, so there are some that are legal, but it's a small percentage compared to the amount that are out there. And of course, the market gets flooded and flooded. And it's another example of how the bigger you get, the less control you have. So one would hope there was something in place that Airbnb would say, oh, you'd love to list your apartment in New York? Wonderful. Can I see your license, please? Maybe that doesn't exist. I don't know. But there's also, when you get down to it, you can't really control what the actual owner of the property is doing. You can't control if they cancel at the last minute. You can't control what state the thing's in. Yes, you can complain to Airbnb.
How the charge, yeah.
But realistically, Airbnb is now a portal. It's not a management system.
Right. So even things like, insurance, you expect that you're covered by insurance, but insurance can sail around outside of local legislation.
Yes.
That kind of beggars belief in a way.
But
surely if you're operating illegally, that insurance becomes null and void. So what happens to someone if they fall off a balcony?
And it's a really grey area. Wow. I think it's so unregulated, it becomes... You almost don't know you're doing something illegal. Those poor people that go on Airbnb go, oh, I'd love to rent. That place looks amazing. I'd love, because it happens in Paris. They've been fined by France as well for exactly the same thing. Right. Too many unlicensed properties. You go on with all the good intentions in the world. I'd love to see New York. I'd love to see Paris. I'd love to see Barcelona. And you book and you think it's all fine. You assume every single thing is in place. But you could turn up and, you don't know what you're getting. The photos are misleading. There was even a scandal back in, it was actually this year, 2024, hidden cameras. So in March 2024, Airbnb had to ban indoor security cameras because owners were basically planting security cameras all around Airbnbs in like the nanny cam style, like the teddy bears and the photo frames and stuff, and basically just watching guests. And that may have been for completely innocent, I want to make sure they're not trashing my property reasons, but equally...
I know they... because that's moved on considerably. Because I looked into this. I don't mean with regard to this podcast, but I looked into it separately about a year ago. How do you actually safeguard residents in a property and those around that property? And there are sensors that are put in, that are fitted, that will actually detect noise above a certain level of decibels.
Oh, so you're not having a party.
Have a crazy party there. You've got a landlord that is then alerted, and then they can take steps against the people who are renting. I think
probably when they banned indoor security systems, that's probably different because that's an alert system.
Placed it.
You don't want a camera in the bedrooms, for example, or the bathrooms. I don't know what level it went to. I imagine some people were worse than others, depending on what they were using the footage for. But there's it seems like such an innocent thing, like going on booking.com, not a sponsor, and sorting out a hotel room. You as the user are doing it with the best of intentions, and the whole thing was set up by these friends with the best of intentions. But like everything, it's developed this slightly darker side people aren't really aware of. I'm not aware of it. I could have stayed in any number of illegal Airbnbs. I wouldn't know.
So come on, what else then? What else is going on?
There's a lot around the mercy of the hosts changing their minds, cancelling at last minute, and Airbnb as a company can do nothing for a stranded guest. So you could travel all the way to, Land's End to John O'Groats, turn up at your Airbnb, and they've
I've read of cases where they have jumped in and they have rescued people, and put them straight up in somewhere else, and
But if they don't have that available,
no, if they don't,
you've got a limited amount of options. I think the thing is, this thing has grown legs and arms and all the rest of it, and it's almost run away from what its intention was. And in the cities it operates in and the locations it operates in, tourists are literally competing with locals for accommodation, or vice versa. Really, the locals are competing with the tourists, and it's just causing massive devastation to city centres. And as much as the governments and the local council put in restrictions and laws, they just can't keep up with the influx of people wanting to make a few extra quid off their back room, or that lodge in their garden, or the yurt they happen to have hired.
Wow. Yeah, that's a. I haven't stopped to think about it. Many people haven't stopped to think about it.
It may not stop you now. You may still be blithely booking on Airbnb.
Yeah.
I just think it's really interesting that you can come up with an idea that, in its essence, is quite innocent.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to protect people with the resumes, and they try to protect people with the systems they put in place. But there will always be people that take advantage or operate under the radar. It's almost the black market side of Airbnb. The
nefarious intention brigade.
That's right. Them. We don't like them. I just think it's really interesting.
Wow. Because it does sound like it could be a community, but it's spoiled by a few seedy players or a few players that are spoiled for
when you get that person at the party that spikes the punch.
Yeah.
Just ruin it for the rest of us. We don't want to be drunk.
Yeah.
So that is my summary of Airbnb's seedy side. There's probably more seedy, but I didn't keep going.
But do you think there's more?
I might never book again.
Advantage, more benefit than seedy, because it's opened up countries. It's opened up.
100%. I think there's more benefit to the user. I think generally, as a user of Airbnb, I think there is a lot of benefit. However, I don't think we necessarily realise the impact we're having on the local economy. And I mean, it brings in tourism, obviously, but if you're a person who works in London, but you haven't got a hope in hell of living in London. What does that do to your life? And
I do know that the short-term rental side of things, I know a bit about this, which is it is creating a problem where you have a city with a certain number of property within it that is given over to short hold rentals, which is basically like
holiday lets.
No, short hold. What's called AST, which is rentals for a year, 12 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever.
Businesses might rent them for new employees.
Yeah, but increasingly, if there's no availability of those rental places where someone can live and actually have their council tax paid, etc., the people that own the holiday let side of things are often being those accommodations are being used by companies to actually rent those spaces
as a backfill for the missing spaces.
So they're paying the same rate as someone who is renting for a weekend. They're paying 120, 150,
which has a premium to it.
A night. Because of course they're having their towels changed on a daily basis. They're having their sheets replaced. They're having it cleaned. And normally cleaned at the end of the stay, but if you're renting that for 3 weeks, that those charges
there's going to be a more frequent
part of it. So actually, there's a hidden part of the economy as well, which is actually those corporations, instead of putting their stuff in hotel rooms, they're putting them into Airbnbs because the hotels are busy.
But that will then just increase the pressure on the system.
Well, it all increases the pressure on the system, which is why so many cities give over so much to short-term lets or holiday lets to actually almost supplement what's available in terms of stock.
But again, that allowance of short-term let isn't necessarily policeable.
No.
You can say I want 50% to be this, 30% to be this, but
and the thing about if you're renting a place to actually live in, and paying a council tax on the space that you're living in, you have rights.
Yes.
Someone that books an Airbnb, they don't have any rights at all. They don't pay the bill, they're out. That's it, kicked out.
And they can.
And that's actually
trash them and all sorts.
What they could do by the flip side of that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean there is an amount of control that a holiday let owner has. Far better for them and their rights as a property owner over someone. And
as much as you've got your council going, right, you can only use this for X. If someone's offering you more money to use it for Y, you're going to choose Y. You're not going to choose X. So I think there's a lot to it. I think people don't consider. I don't think the idea is a bad idea. I think the execution
it's not. They all fit together. They fit together. They have to fit together, and they have to work. There's room for all of them. But I can understand what you say about some cities. They have been, especially those who are on the tourist trails. They have been overrun, which then means that people who living in those city centre apartments are then out. They have to go and live in the suburbs. They can't then get into town.
You'd struggle with an unsustainable economy because if you're talking about a holiday crowd, you're talking about the weekends, long weekends. So you're talking Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the middle of the week when there's nobody left because there's no one living in long-term accommodation. There's literally only that tourist trade. That's a real peak and a trough for any city centre to survive through. I know that's an extreme example. You're not going to get rid of every long-term resident, but it will affect small businesses, it will affect the larger businesses, it will affect the economic makeup of the conurbation. It can make a real difference. I think we just have to be a bit more conscious when we're choosing what we do and where we go.
But but for the property owner, they just want their place rented. That's it.
They want the most money,
right.
the most money for their situation.
There is that side that I also see as well, which is actually if you've invested all that money, you want some return on it.
No, 100%.
Yeah. So it's a real tricky kind of.
It's a very moral grey area.
It can be.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's many people who've got it balanced out right, and they're not.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who do it legally, and they never cancel on their guests and all the rest of it. But there is this opportunity.
And they're not kicking out the original.
No, they're not kicking out the original tenants because they know they can make twice as much of a short-term let. Yeah. It's interesting. There is the possibility in everything for that kind of grey area to develop, whether you want it to or not.
Always. There always will be. Yeah.
That's just life, I suppose.
It is. Yeah. So maybe that's just an example of life distilled into accommodation.
It wasn't as cheery as I thought it was going to be.
No.
Sorry.
But doesn't mean to say that Airbnb and others of their ilk, because there are others of their ilk, they didn't set out to do anything wrong.
I don't think they did.
They still haven't. Actually, they haven't actually done anything wrong. They've allowed for these things to.
They want to make tourism accessible.
Exist. Exactly. Yeah.
Fine. But
interesting.
That was today.
I'll go and have a think about this.
Will you though?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go and book an Airbnb. Thanks so much for listening and being a part of today's episode.
If you like what you've heard, or if you feel there's something missing, or you want to ask any questions, please get in contact.
And if you love listening to us as much as we love talking to you, subscribe, download, leave us a review. All the love helps.
Thank you.